Welcome to all. I'm asking everybody to mute themselves, and I welcome people to put questions in the chat. We have a large group of people today. I'm actually very pleased that we have a large group of people because as all the Americans know, that we are in the middle of a coup in the United States. So these are very difficult times in the United States. And I can also say that almost for sure, the situation will get worse. That said, I'll also say that it's very important for us to realize, for those of us that are Americans, though these are very trying times in the United States, what occurs in the Middle East, will impact what's going on in the United States, so that the two are connected. What I'd like to do now is just introduce myself and then say briefly how the session will go today, and then we'll get started. My name is Norbert Goldfield, Dr. Norbert Goldfield, and I am the founder and executive director of Healing Across the Divides. Many of you know about Healing Across Divides, but a fair number of you don't. We are a 20-year-old American nonprofit whose mission it is to measurably improve the health of Israelis and Palestinians through community-based interventions. We do this through already existing community groups. We've been in existence for 20 years, as I've already pointed out. We've measurably improved the lives of over 250,000 people. And before I hand it over to Veronica, I just want to say with a touch of emotion that it's very certain that some of the people on the call were on a Zoom that I did this morning. What I did this morning was work with one of the groups that's in Jenin in the northern West Bank, where the Israeli military is actively involved as we speak, implementing a program that was developed by a colleague and friend, Professor Kate Lord from Stanford University, called Chronic Disease Self-Management. And they, in turn, these 10 people, will be working with hundreds of Palestinians on chronic disease self-management. Today, because of the presence of the Israeli military, they all spoke from home. None of them were leaving their homes. One of the techniques of chronic disease self-management is to distract yourself. And one of the conclusions that we came to was that the 2-hour session that I did this morning was at least a little bit of a distraction from the ongoing military incursion that's going on right now in Jenin. And that brought smiles to everybody's face. So that's the essence in many ways of Healing Across the Divides. What I'd like to do now is to say, before I introduce Veronica, is that our staff will speak first, Veronica Viktorchuk, who's our Israeli representative, then Nihat Fatah, who is our Palestinian representative, followed by Tova Reznicek, who lives in Israel, who's our communications director, and then 2 of our grantees will speak, and then 2 of our 2 outside speakers, Dalia Shenlin and Sam Bahor, 2 old friends and colleagues, and they will be in dialogue with each other. That will get us to about 10:45 Eastern time, and then there'll be time for some dialogue and questions. I would encourage you all to put your questions in the chat. Veronica, it's all yours, and it's an honor to be with you this morning.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know it's difficult times here in Palestine, also in the United States. So thank you for taking your time and being here. What I will say, it's my personal experience and my opinion. So it's really important for me to say that I'm not representing everyone that in Israel. It's just from my perspective and point of view. I would say that I will start with the grantees. The most important thing that we do with the grantees now is working with women. Most of our grantees are working with women on resilience, as we know that working with women is promoting and doing ripple effect in the community and the families. So this is our main focus, mostly work on mental health and community-based work in the most underprivileged areas, in the unrecognized villages in the south, with the refugees from asylum seekers from Africa. And we have one program that doing mother tongue. It's working with women pre-birth and after-birth between Palestinian and Israeli women that are living in Israel. For me, this work is giving me hope and also a resilience, similar to what Norbert said, because I do have, even though the situation is extremely violent, even though there is no active war I'm doing in Gaza, it's still a war. We are still in a violent situation. People are still evacuated, some of them. And as Norbert said, inclusion, sorry for my English if it's not correct, in the West Bank. Not all the hostages came back, and the entire political situation in Israel is unstable. It's very violent. People are getting silence. You are not able to speak your mind. And a lot of activism is being marked as traitors. So for me, as an activist, I'm also silencing myself and trying to do whatever I can do on the daily basis. I'm also doing dialogue between Israeli and Palestinians. It's not so for me, promoting peace and doing some things on the ground that sending hope and trying to bring people together and see the light in the end of the tunnel, or some kind of light, is what makes me go and and that's what makes me wake up with at least some kind of smile in the morning. I think I will finish with that. Nihad and Tova will continue whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Nihat?
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. Hi,
Nihat,
my name, yeah.
go ahead. You go ahead. You can introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about the internet. I can't get on video. It's bad where we're at. I live in a village outside of Ramallah, but my name is Nihad Fattah, and I am the Palestinian representative, and have been working with Healing Across the Divides now for about 8 years. It's been a while. 7 years. It's been a while. Anyways,
A long time.
I want to piggyback off of Norbert's. Let me start first. First of all, the security situation is bad. We know that there is a ceasefire right now in Gaza, but it's very fragile. The political situation is also very fragile. Currently in the north, there are incursions. There have been about four, I'm getting these numbers wrong, but I think I've found some numbers, and I could estimate around 40,000 to 60,000 Palestinians who are living in refugee camps in the north have been currently displaced. And so they have nowhere to go and no shelters. Some of them are, I want to say, sleeping on the street is what we're hearing. I mean, we're hearing different stories, but Jenin has been hard hit. Today also was another major operation for them. in the Jenin camp. So the situation is really, really bad. Where I live, we also have daily incursions in the evenings and checkpoints, daily checkpoints, and we get stopped and we're harassed almost every day. So the situation is just really, really bad. Having said that, I want to piggyback on what Norbert was saying about resilience and the work that we do with our grantees. All of our grantees, even the ones that have had to shift their programming because they can't get into for example, refugee camps. We have our organizations that work in refugee camps. They've all shifted to doing online work. We have a group called Al-Mej that's doing now individual counseling online instead of doing their sessions, which they would normally do in the camps. So everyone has still not given up hope, and that's what gives me hope. We live in a situation right now where it's dire. I think for a lot of people, but I'm currently helping manage 10 grantees, and every single one of them wake up and they get ready and they go out and they help those that are in need. And so that is where I get my hope. Otherwise, I think I'd have a really hard time trying to grasp what's happening around us. I do want to say that USAID, this is just something that's related to the US, has completely cut all funding to the West Bank right now, and I know it's around the world, but for us, for the Palestinians, it's a big chunk of money. We are a very, very donor dependent country, given the fact that we are living under this brutal occupation. So the effects of what's happening in the States has always had a ramification on Palestine, but more so recently. So I have to say that all of the grantees are so grateful for the work that we are providing with Healing Across the Divides, because we don't have them as a funding source. And so I've received calls from almost all our grantees asking if they're going to be affected in any way. And we're very relieved to know that our funding will continue, even though USAID has stopped. I think I'll stop right there and happy to answer questions after. Thank you.
Tova Reznicek is our communications director based in Israel. Thank you, Tova.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Norbert and Nihat and Veronica, and for everybody joining us here today. So I am nominally the communications director, but I do wear a lot of hats, and we all are a team on the group, really. So on the backdrop of all these, very clearly huge challenges that we're having wherever we are right now, in the US, certainly here in the region, when Norbert asked for us to speak about resilience, I realized that there is basically in a place like this, or wherever there are challenges, there are also almost, I would say here, the amount of resilience that comes with the challenges that we face is absolutely huge and commendable, and that programs like the ones that Healing Across the Divide support are certainly a huge part of promoting that type of resilience of mind and of body. And I came across something that I just want to see if I can share. It's very short, and I think that this is from one of Healing Across the Divide's current grantees. And one second, let's see if that works. It may not, but we'll try. This is from Wahat Salam, Neve Shalom. Can everybody see that screen?
Yep.
I shared this with our staff the other day. This isn't the program that Healing Across the Divides right now is funding, but the incredible power of it, I think, is relevant in terms of resilience. So, and I'm sure that Roy Silverberg, who's going to speak about the program, can share more. But this, one of the programs that they were running had, this is a a Jewish Israeli participant of dialogue groups, of a dialogue group that Neve Shalom ran, and the father shares, let me just read this for anybody who can't see it. A participant in one of our ongoing programs shared that his 13-year-old son asked him a lot of questions about the situation, meaning, of course, the war in Gaza, and that he's also expressing his concerns about children in Gaza. And the father suggests that he write a letter to the kids, which he did. So this is a letter translated from Hebrew. Dear people of Gaza, I cannot and probably will never understand the suffering that you're going through. I wish you and anyone in the world would never experience this. I really wish that you, from the bottom of my heart, I wish you only the best. It would be very happy to know, I would be very happy to know that one day, if possible, that you are happy and living a good life. I really believe that one day this conflict will end and we shall live in peace without resentment and hatred. I wish all the best things in the world would get to all human beings with love and deep understanding that you too deserve only good. So now I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to say, though, that Wahat Salam, this particular grantee, is so much more than bringing Jews and Palestinians together in the antiquated sense that we think about it. It's almost the opposite. But I think that this really shows a component of the mental resilience that we can have and need to have in terms of learning from one another, thinking outside the box, thinking how we can move forward and humanize everybody that's around us, and in that way make sure that we are tapping into every single person that has the energy and desire to end this terrible conflict. And that's one of the programs that I'm so happy that Healing Across Divides is funding right now. And as with everything else, mind and body, and on to Tamara. So let's hope for a better tomorrow. That's it. On to you, Tamara.
Thank you very much, Tova. So Tamara Aratani, it's an honor to have you, and you'll introduce yourself. She's the director of one of the programs that we're funding. Thank you, Tamara, for joining.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. And it's a pleasure to be here. I just wanted to give you a quick introduction about myself, and then I'll tell you on what we do in the program. So my name is Tamara Awartani. I come from Ramallah, Palestine. I'm an academic and practitioner in the sports for development field. The program that we are implementing is now for the third year with Healing Across the Divides, where we have seen good results throughout the years, and hopefully we will be able to do better results this year, especially that there is a much more need now towards the well-being. And I'll give you a bit of background information about the organization and then about the program. So Palestine Sports for Life organization has been founded in 2010. It's a leading Palestinian nonprofit sports for development organization. And basically our programs are all developed to serve social needs and designed according to the SDGs. We mainly work on health and well-being, quality education, economic empowerment, gender equality, and climate action at the start, social inclusion. And for this program, we are working, of course, on health and well-being. We are also recognized globally and part of many global networks in the sports for development field. About Healing Across the Divides program, that we are really focusing on health and well-being. So in year one, we worked in Qalandia refugee camp, which is in East Jerusalem, and Arub refugee camp, which is in Hebron. Of course, as Palestine Sports for Life, we target marginalized women and girls mostly. Across Palestine in the refugee camps. In Qalandra, in those two camps, we have targeted 400 students and 50 mothers. And in year two, we have worked in Amari refugee camp and in Balata refugee camp. in Nablus, where we have targeted 370 students and 135 mothers. In year 3, we are working now in Aqbat Jabr refugee camp in Jericho and El Tire Ramallah Girls School, which has refugees from across Ramallah. We're targeting 500 students and 50 moms, where we are working on their nutritional awareness about their health. And of course, due to the situation at the moment, we are really focusing on their mental health and psychosocial support through purposeful play, because that's our aim. We usually use sports as a tool to develop then their social aspects. In the first 2 years, we have 82% from the moms who have reported an increase in their mental health, well-being, and stress management, like an improvement. And this is because we have addressed the psychosocial challenges throughout the program. We have also seen that 74% of the moms, that their engagement with their families and the community has increased positively. In terms of the students, the results are also equally promising. We have 86% who have reported feeling healthier and more active, and 79% also have enhanced confidence and life skills, because we work a lot about personal growth and self-expression through sports. In this year, we are facing really more challenges due to the fact that there is lots of, let's say, as you know, blockades. There are several more checkpoints, hundreds actually of checkpoints that have like new gates, increased moving around. So anyone who is in any city or in any village thinks twice about leaving, because then it takes you 2 or 3 hours, sometimes at a checkpoint, sometimes a whole day, just going for a 1 hour a journey to do something and come back. So we're talking about really loss of time and anger and all of that that comes with it for waiting at a checkpoint that is controlled. So it's not really great times now at the checkpoints. Though we are now doing a lot that we are trying to positively change, at least the well-being, as indicated. Anything just being in that bubble to change the well-being of children. I will share with you one story from Al Amari on a health aspect that she felt usually low energy, and she felt really sluggish throughout the day. But after being in this program, she has more energy, and she's being able to attend classes with more focus. And such a simple change has affected her and her life, not only her as a person, but also her family. I'm also indicating another PE teacher who has taken health as an important aspect into her life as well. But throughout the structured program, she has felt that it was not only about personal discipline, but it's also fostering a culture about well-being that extends beyond familial boundaries. I'll also share one more story from Layan, who comes from Jericho, and it's not only at the moment teaching her about healthy lifestyle through purposeful play, but it also lets her release the energy in these activities and maintain a positive feeling. At the moment, we have 4,060 children from 10 schools from West Bank, Jenin, and Tulkarem, and Far'a. 4,060 children who are out of school. This is a huge number. And we have 2,892 children who are internally displaced. They are not in their homes anymore, and they are not in schools anymore. They are either in tents, in the streets, in mosques, in youth centers, wherever they can be in such a time. It's really bad. And once we are always talking about health and well-being, the situation is not really helping. And these are children. Like, this is what I really wanted to highlight, that the youth of today are always the leaders of tomorrow. We need to be able to provide them with better circumstances, because in end effect, we are all human beings, and we all really want to just live and have our basic rights. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tamara, for this really very moving and at the same time, in a very small way, but modest and measurable way, a way of moving forward. What I'd like to do now, I believe, is to introduce Noam Alon, who will speak for no more than 5 minutes about the new program. So you can see we have both new programs and old programs. The Palestine Sports for Life is in the 3rd and last year. Our grants are 3 years always. Whereas Neve Shalom is just beginning their program. I believe it's going to be Noam, and look forward to hearing from you to speak for the next maximum 5 minutes. Thank you.
It's Roi.
Roi. Well, then in that case, pleasure to welcome you, Roi. And you can see that I'm just getting to know the people at Neve Shalom. So Roi, if you could speak for no more than 5 minutes, I look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Norbert, for presenting me. I will present the School for Peace in Wahat al-Salam Neve Shalom, and then I will talk a little bit about the program. Wahat al-Salam Neve Shalom is the only place where Jews and Palestinians choose to come and live together. And as a part of one of the institutions in this community is the School for Peace, which is its goal is to influence the societies outside, the Jewish and Palestinian societies, into becoming more dialogical, more in the orientation of equality and just solution. And we're doing several programs. We're doing dialogue groups in the universities and colleges. We're doing change agents courses for professionals like environmentalists or mental health professionals or lawyers or architects. And we're doing a lot of work with our graduates towards activism and involvement. The program that we're doing with Healing the Divide is a program aimed at mental health professionals that are already aware and are already done a thing or two in the process of understanding the other, understanding the connection between their professional work and the situation and the political situation and situation between Jews and Palestinians on the ground. I don't have to talk a lot and to explain a lot about, first of all, the demand for mental health treatment at this stage, and also about the difference or the change that happened in relation to what is causing, what are the challenges for mental health professionals. First of all, there are more challenges to the people themselves, there are more stresses and a bit different stresses than there were. And second of all, the treatment is done under a totally different situation and context. And the group that we are building and developing and will start in May is aimed at learning those challenges. It's a learning and development group. It's going to learn and invest energy and resources in learning and understanding the challenges that are standing in front of the mental health profession right now, both organizationally and in the clinic itself as a treatment orientation, and also to develop a framework of how to address those challenges and the recommendations and involvement of the participants of those mental health professionals in dispersing and teaching about this framework. I hope I was on time, Norbert.
You were great. And I look forward to spending time with you when I come in the next month. So I think this is meant to just give you a little bit of a flavor of two of the grantees. I'm hoping that we are supporting 15 grantees at the present time in both Israel and occupied Palestine. We'd be happy to respond to questions, but first we are honored, and I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this because I'm technologically, shall we say, challenged, to put it in a positive way. That we are honored to have Dalia Shendlin and Sam Bahour for the next 15 minutes, and Dalia and Sam will be introducing themselves, but suffice it to say, it is my honor to know and to have spent time with them over the last many, many years. And so I'm not sure if if somebody can tell me how to put two people, or maybe I'll do this way.
I think we can just unmute ourselves.
Oh, yeah, no, I was trying to see if I could have you and
Oh,
Sam
oh.
on the screen just to.
Once we're speaking, we come on the main screen, so I think people will see us.
Okay. Sam and Dalia, it's all yours.
Dalia, go
Hi,
ahead.
Sam.
Hi,
Oh, no, I was going to tell you to go ahead alphabetically.
as you please. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. First, I want to thank Healing Across the Divides. It's an important distinction, divides. There's more divides than just Israel-Palestine. There's divide, rural, urban, class divide, etc. And I think HATD is looking at all of those in its work. And I should also acknowledge the years that I've known and followed HATD. I would say that we need to acknowledge community-based work, especially during these very stressful times where the state of states is pathetic. Whether it's the US here or Israel, the marginalized, the underprivileged are getting the short end of the stick with no savior in sight. So anything we can do to support these communities is important. I'm also very pleased to share the panel with see so many friends and share the panel with Dalia. As I told Norbert, she's one of my best persons, not Israelis, persons in general. I read her every few days, and I encourage you to do the same. And if you're really interested to get some insight, her latest book, The Crooked Timber of Democracy in Israel, is very well worth the read if you want to get into the more knowledge about the inner workings of Israeli politics. In general, I would just say Gaza is front and center for the last 16 months for all of us, and we're exhausted. We're emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, we're not sleeping. I can't even imagine what it means to live it because I'm feeling all of that just following it from afar. That noted, and I want to make a point very, very clear, everything that we're seeing, sadly, is not new. Except for the acceleration of what's going on and the intensity, the elements of what we're seeing, whether it's bombing, house demolitions, arrests, torture, you name it, has been part and parcel of our existence ever since the State of Israel was created. So the urgency to end this is so high right now because we can't keep having more iterations that get more intense and more intense. As there's a lull right now in the Gaza fighting, the Israeli government has swiftly moved to the West Bank, as was noted by Nihad, the north of the West Bank in particular, and the refugee camps specifically. We have over 40,000 people that have been displaced from their homes, mainly from the refugee camps. And not only that, but something novel is happening is that when the Israelis enter the refugee camp, which they do regularly during decades now, this time they're bringing tanks and, not tanks, I'm sorry, they're bringing bulldozers to uproot the camp, to uproot the infrastructure of the camp. Something very clear, as Israeli people in charge have been saying, is that we're going to Gazify the West Bank. And it seems that's what's happening, maybe not at the same scale, but the same result. Today, just a couple hours ago, I read that the Israeli Minister of Defense, Katz, declared that he informed the Israeli military not to allow those displaced people, those 40,000 people, to return home for at least a year, and asked the IDF to prepare to stay there for a year. Not only that, they've announced that a tank battalion will enter Jenin in the coming days. This is a very, very dangerous development. All that and more, and I'm still focused on international law. Otherwise, I'd be accepting the law of the jungle, which I don't. International law has not been a friend of the Palestinians, but it's all we have if we want to remain civil amongst peoples of the world. So I'm attaching myself to that and trying to get the states, who are the implementers of international law, to do their work. The text, the codification of international law is sound. In the midst of all this, we ask, and many are asking, what can be done? I encourage you to support and or volunteer with Healings Across the Divides. No effort is too small to make an impact on individual lives when we are at this desperate point. People still matter, and every family, every individual deserves any assistance they can get. Otherwise, we try to grasp the whole problem and we'll never go one step forward. Dalia?
Well, Sam is a tough act to follow, but I can't even thank you enough, Sam, for being such a loyal reader of my work. Very hard to know what to even say or think about the situation here. And also, I think it was also very important that Sam began by talking about healing across the divides, not just divide, because it's true that there are numerous divisions, and you name some of them. But to my mind, one of the critical divisions is the division of opinion within each society. I think that one of the worst, processes that, as you correctly point out, has always been there, but each society is really looking at the other like a monolith. And it's a very dangerous situation for, I want to be able to tell you where we're going to look for sources of change, but you have to understand the initial situation. Israeli attitudes are very, very negative, probably more than ever before. They view Palestinians as a monolith. You hear, that all Palestinians support Hamas, support October 7th, are responsible, etc. I think Palestinians, probably look at Israelis in that way, pretty much like, Israelis are soldiers, Israelis have a mandatory draft, everybody participates somehow in the war. And it's a very, very dangerous situation when people stop distinguishing not only, for example, combatants from civilians, but also if people forget that there are communities who do not agree with the policies, or even if they're not actual dissenting communities, there are communities who are concerned for the other side, who care about the humanity of the other side. They may be not so vocal right now. Again, I think there are some similarities here, even though I would not want to portray a symmetry of power, okay? But there are certain similar ways of thinking about this. And, the fact that each side is not a monolith is, that is a divide within each society that is very prominent in both cases. I know, I'm going to talk about Israeli society primarily, but you have to understand that there are communities in Israel who look like they come from different planets in terms of their attitudes. And you don't have a lot of protest against the war, but you do have, significant minorities, let's say, who are willing to, who express and distinguish from their perspective between innocence and not innocence, and see the course of the war as wrongful for both sides' interests. And those distinctions do have to be kept in mind. Now, where do I see that there are any opportunities to break out of this extremely, extremely negative environment? I mean, I can't, overstate how bad it is, both politically on the ground in terms of the war and in terms of people's, very, very harsh attitudes towards the other. One thing I'm going to point to about, let's say, 4 quick things. One is, I'm not sure if these are in the right order, but one is, there's a deep level of exhaustion with the war on the Israeli side. When the ceasefire came around in Gaza, we already, for months, there had been reporting, and I had tried to, I verified it by doing my own interviews with people in the army who have noticed how hard it is to get people to come back for reserve duty after having served for so long. We hear, anecdotally and in our conversations about a great deal of post-trauma and, leading to a certain level of dysfunction. And, it's not to say there's going to be a mass, wave of refusal, but there is the cost of the war for Israelis is becoming very, very egregious economically, personally, on family relations, and, leading to a kind of snowballing of both the personal, economic and physical difficulty with what they're doing. And that's before we even talk about moral injury, something that has just barely started to come up, which will probably take years to come out. So that's one thing. And, there's a lot of, I think, concern about the idea that the government snaps its fingers and just goes back to war when people who have been serving for hundreds of days, their families don't want them to go back, their partners, their children, they themselves have been coping with going back to real life. So that's out there. And that leads to the second point, which is a crisis of trust in the political leadership. There, from the beginning, the majority of Israelis have been against this government for reasons that, frankly, are not about Palestinian welfare, but because of what the government had been doing domestically, which is, of course, connected, but most Israelis didn't make the connection. But since the war, it's gotten worse. And one of the ways that's expressed itself is a majority of Israelis do not believe in the idea of total victory. So what the government has been saying, the war has to continue so that we can reach total victory. People don't believe it anymore, at least the majority. There's a sizable minority that does. And that leads to deep questions about whether there is a justification for continuing the war. And it also leads to, the possibility that whenever elections are held, we don't know when, might not be till late 2026, that there might be a change of government. It's too soon to tell. I would not want you to think that I'm predicting a change of government, but all polls so far show that the current original coalition, a very extremist, ultranationalist, theocratic, really fundamentalist Jewish leadership, the original coalition has not been able to win in any survey, serious surveys, since it was established pretty much, and even worse since the war. The other thing that I look at when I consider survey research, and this is a longer term trend, but I'm throwing it out there just so you realize, because I've been thinking about it. For many years, we've noticed that younger people are more militant in Israel, especially among the Jewish population. It's a very clear trend for the last roughly 15 years, at least. They are more self-defined right-wing, less compromising, less supportive of peace, and less supportive of democratic values as well. So it's a troubling trend. But, somebody wrote in the chat, I think, that the young people are the leaders of tomorrow. Maybe it was in a presentation. The young people are the leaders of tomorrow. That's certainly true. But what I have found over time, ever since I've been looking at that at least 15-year-old trend of young people being more hardline, is that they are not necessarily the same people by the time they grow up and become the generation that takes leadership. We've seen it in politics, and I see it in my surveys. People who are over 55 consistently are more moderate, including over the years as those young people are growing up. So, it doesn't cancel out the rates of their self-identified hardline positions, but it does mitigate them over time. And I've been trying to think about why. My best explanation so far is that people get tired of war over the years, not just this war. And finally, one more thing, I think that, there is a hard, pragmatic kind of political analysis for what could get better. And it's based on the things that I just said. You would need to have a change of leadership in Israel, which is not certainly definite, but it could happen. You could have the Trump administration, which wants nothing good for Palestinians, but certainly wants we think wants a regional peace deal of some sort with the US and Saudi Arabia, and maybe will force Saudi Arabia to try to move towards a deal with Israel, which could entail or require Israel to move towards a final status resolution based on Palestinian statehood. That's far-fetched right now, but it's a potential path forward in the longer term. And on the immediate term, I think one thing that we, don't think about too often, but will never go away, is the need for cooperation over needs-based areas where the two sides are interdependent. Economics, environment, resources, climate, public health, and eventually security, if there is ever to be a mutually beneficial final status resolution. The two sides are interdependent in so many ways. And so, of course, I think what Healing Across the Divide does is just the best manifestation of the need for the two sides to coexist, whether we like the term politically or not. And when it happens and it comes and it fulfills itself, because there are genuinely shared interdependent interests, it works. It's the only inevitable way to build a political solution that reflects that interdependence. So I'll stop there. Those are the kinds of things that at least give me a sense of where change might come from.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to put us back into the gallery mode. We have a large number of people here, and encourage everybody, if at all possible, to send a note in the chat a question or a comment in the chat. There's a comment from Madrid and regarding how to, well, now it's starting to come through, as to how to provide support for some of the, or how we could support such efforts from a professional capacity. What everybody will do, what I will do with everybody, in addition to sending out a copy of the recording, is that you'll all get a list of all the grantees that we're currently supporting. And certainly if you want to be engaged with any of them, we can facilitate that. In addition, we're a founding member of an organization called the Alliance for Middle East Peace, which has over 100 organizations that are members, and they're doing different things. So feel free to email me directly. You'll be getting a note from me if there's some other areas that you'd like to volunteer in. A question from Louis Casas, who I just want to point out is a board member for Healing Across the Divides. Can you discuss the recent surveys as to support for Netanyahu on how this has changed since October 7th? Dalia, that's for you. And if you
Sure,
want to
sure.
go for it.
Okay. Well, I'll try to be quick to leave time for my colleagues. I can tell you that the most, unusual thing was that after October 7th, when any country goes to war, usually we see what's called a rally round the flag effect, and there's huge support for the leadership in times like that. You saw this with Zelensky, and you've seen it, with other societies at war. Certainly after September 11th, you saw it in the US as well. In Israel, we had the opposite. We had a complete collapse of support for the government, for Netanyahu, for his party. His party lost 50% of its support in surveys. Netanyahu himself went from being, ahead of his competitors in personal poll questions to being 20 points behind. And that situation was very stable and lasted for about 6 months. But from about April 2024, he began very slowly to recover just incrementally in surveys, but it was a consistent rise over the months. And at present, and I should say that the rise was pretty clearly attributed, in my mind, to Israel's expanding, its initiative on the regional level, right? Starting in April when Israel assassinated a senior Al-Quds general in Damascus, and then continuing to assassinating both Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, assassinating Hassan Nasrallah, whose funeral was today, and then escalating the war against Hezbollah, which, in response to Hezbollah's having joined the war in the beginning. And all of that regional initiative from Israelis' perspective showed that Israel was once again strong. And that really helped Netanyahu's support go back up, but not to where he was when he won the elections. It went back up to where he was before the war, which was not as good as where he was before the elections because of the very unpopular domestic policies. And that's where things stand today. Every time there is I would say when there's some escalation on the regional front, Israelis feel strong. Gaza is a losing issue for Netanyahu. People are miserable about Gaza, again, not because they're peace-loving anti-war. I don't want to, give you the wrong picture, but because they don't understand, the aims of the war and how it's supposed to end. The majority, I think at this point, it's safe to say, are unclear about where the war is going. And as a result, it doesn't reflect well on the prime minister. But, he has safely recovered to where he was before the war. And what I think we're seeing over the last few weeks is that the hostage release deal, the ceasefire, hostage and release and prisoner release deal, didn't actually do very well for Netanyahu. But having been embraced by Trump and seeing Trump take a hardline position that is even beyond what the right wing was even willing to say here, basically, calling for the expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza and hinting that, or at least implicitly allowing Israel to escalate very severely in the West Bank, I think that has given a slight survey boost to Netanyahu and his coalition, which could continue. I don't know yet, but I think that the US piece of that, anything global that looks like a success for Netanyahu, strengthens him.
Thank you very much. Kathy Levine, who's a board member highlights the fact that last year, when we had a call for proposals, we had 85 applications, actually the most we've ever received. And this is well before USAID event. What I'd like to just point out that we were able to fund 6. We're very proud of the fact that we're funding 15 grantees. We will do another call for proposals later this year because, as I already indicated, we have 3-year grants and some of them are finishing up, as is the grant for Palestine Sports for Life. This question, instead of Dalia, I'm going to ask Sam Bahour. And certainly I want to, before I turn to Sam, I'm going to just make sure Tamara or Roe, if you have any comments about the projects you're doing that you would like to highlight that you felt that you didn't, feel free to do that. Sam, I'm going to ask you from your perspective, what will happen in the West Bank in the near future? And so how do you see the situation, and go from there?
I've been living here long enough to become wise enough not to predict, especially during wartime. However, if the trends are any indication, we are going to see a further deterioration of the West Bank overall. They started in Nablus and went to Tulkarem and Jenin. So they're in the north of the West Bank doing damage. And as I noted, a tank battalion is going to enter the scene. That's not going to make things any less tense. But we can also see that the Israeli military is operating across the West Bank even today. I mean, yesterday they were at the Jalazon refugee camp, which is next to my house. And they're regularly entering in the Hebron area as well. So there's a concentrated effort to do as much damage as possible. And it's not about just arresting somebody that might be militant. It's about uprooting the infrastructure of the camp. I don't know how a water pipe can be terrorist, or a roundabout in the middle of the street can be a terrorist roundabout, but those are the things that are being destroyed. That will create a long-term reaction. So once the Israeli military backs out, as they have to do ultimately, you're going to find a generation of Palestinians who have had their first encounter with direct military actions on behalf of Israel that forced them out of their home. Kids don't forget that. And I tell people now, even in thinking about Gaza, what fears me most in Gaza is not exactly what's happening today, which is disastrous, but it's Hamas version 2.0. I don't know what the name of it will be, but Israel, and even Blinken noted this on his exiting remarks, what will be created in the aftermath of this genocidal attack is something which will be much more dangerous than what we're seeing today. We're seeing that kind of militarism in the West Bank rise. The last poll that I read, and remember, we're living under the most surveilled community in the world, probably. So when a pollster calls you and asks, "Are you for armed struggle?" you think twice before being honest in your answer. Even with that kind of a scenario, something like 52% of people said they're for armed struggle, knowing that they're being totally surveilled. That's a very dangerous number, but people are reacting to the reality in front of them. So until I think we hold the parties accountable, and when I say that I'm trying to maintain a mindset of international law, today that means accountability, not only for Israel, for all the parties involved, including the US. There has to be accountability if we're going to put the brakes on what's happening. Otherwise, everybody has a free-for-all, and the only constant in this equation is the Palestinian leadership, which is doing nothing. So we will be on the receiving end of more militarism and more weapons coming from the US. So I'm not hopeful in the short term, but ultimately this will end and we'll have a huge rehabilitation process in front of us.
Well, just to re-echo and to amplify what Sam just said and what Dalia also indicated, the reality is at the end of the day and during the day, we at Healing Across the Divides are there. I want to just re-echo what I said at the very beginning of this conversation. It frankly moved me to no end, the fact that the people in Janine who are working with the program that was developed by Professor Kate Lorig, who, by the way, I want to point out is actually on the Zoom today. And it's a methodology that's translated and validated in Arabic, that they wanted to be at the program today. And they were in their own homes because they were forbidden from leaving. And so they all joined. We had the program today. And at the end, we sort of had a good laugh to say that, in fact, well, I guess it was a form of distraction. And as Kate Lorig knows, that's one of the techniques that we use in chronic disease self-management, that you have to distract yourself from the tragedy that's going on. So I would like to just see if there's any last questions, put them in the chat. Otherwise, people who know me know that I start on time and I end on time. We're 2 minutes before the end. If there's a last question, happy to respond. And if not, I'm going to ask either any of the speakers if they have any last comments while we see if there's any last questions. Does any of the speakers have any last comments they would like to highlight? Veronica, Nihad, Tova in particular?
I would like to add my voice to those who are saying what a great job you guys are doing. I think this is the source of hope for the future.
Thank you so much. At the end of the day, and I just want to point out that we not only try to improve the lives through the community-based groups, but we try to do it in a measurable fashion. And one thing that Tamara didn't say, and then we'll stop, is that in this third and last year, the intervention of improving women and adolescent girls' lives through nutrition and sports exercise is being done in 2 refugee camps, and then there's a 3rd refugee camp that's going to be served as a control group where the intervention is not going to occur. And what we're going to try to do is to demonstrate the amazing work that the Palestine Sports for Life. I always say, and my wife has reminded me, that I'm the lucky one to have started Healing Across Divides, because I'm sure that you all would agree that the people who are on the Zoom today speaking are just amazing people. They're living their lives. They just want to live their lives. Thank you so much to everybody. Let's give everybody a hand of applause to everybody on the Zoom. Thank you so much for being here. It's exactly 11 o'clock. Thanks again, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. Please be in touch. Bye-bye now.